Further discuss this now with Joe Siracusa in Perth, Australia. He's an author and the Dean of Global Features in the Faculty of Humanities at Curtin University. Professor, it's really good to see you today. Now, they've tried to repeal the AUMFs before, but it didn't work. Do you think it'll work this time around?
Oh, yeah, they're going to get rid of it. I think just before we came on air, they buried it 66-30 or something like that. This authorization gave the president an opportunity to use forces without having to go to Congress first. So under the War Powers Act of 1971, he has to go to Congress after 30 days. Your audience may not be old enough for this, because you have a lot of younger people, but this authorization is very much like the Gulf of Tonkin resolution that Lyndon Johnson had in 1964 to wage war against North Vietnam and then Laos and Cambodia and wherever else he wanted to go in Southeast Asia. So there's a long history of giving the president exceptional powers. And in the case of the Gulf of Tonkin and in the case of the Iraq War authorization, we have now buried them. You know, it's important to have to close these down historically. I don't know if it gives Congress any more sense of power, but it certainly is a signal to the president that he has to consult Congress. I mean, the Congress should be very careful about its war powers. But, you know, historically, since 1945, the president makes war and Congress pays for it. So, you know, while Congress is supposed to declare war, it only does so after the fact because the president has the initiative.
Right, and there was also another authorization that had passed back in 2001, straight after 9/11. They've decided to keep that authorization. Tell us why.
Well, because let's face it, the war on terror is not over. I mean, the terrorists are still out there. They morphed and morphed again after the failure to manage Iraq or nation build there, and they morphed into ISIS and other things. So the United States still wants the ability to engage the enemy without having to go through the laborious task of getting in touch with Congress. But also keep in mind that we have to sort of bury this thing because it's associated with a couple lies. You know, President George W. Bush said that Saddam Hussein was working closely with bin Laden. That wasn't true. And then he said that they had weapons of mass destruction. That wasn't true. And it turns out he knew it wasn't true. As far as he was concerned, he was far more interested in Saddam's intentions and capabilities. His father in the first war in 1991 was mainly interested in disgorging the Iraqis from Kuwait. He was interested in capabilities. But George W. Bush decided to turn it into a campaign. You know, the war on terror started slowly in Afghanistan, and then the president in his State of the Union address lumped Iraq with the axis of evil. And so by this time now, he demonized Saddam Hussein, and you know, it was all systems go. But, you know, we didn't find any weapons. We didn't expect to find any weapons. No one I know did. Right. And there was, of course, no connection between bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. In fact, Saddam Hussein wouldn't have tolerated the guy around him. So it was a very, very expensive lesson. A lot of people died. A lot of things started to happen in the Middle East. And
exactly.
I like to bury these kinds of resolutions, but the president can do whatever he wants for 30 days, according to the War Powers Act. So in this case, it's a chance for the senators to look senatorial. I mean, to look serious about taking back these things.
So they're trying to bury this, as you mentioned, but what's in it for Iraq? What's Iraq's position in all of this? What changes for them? I mean, the damage has already been done, and not one American has been held accountable for the millions of lives that have been affected by the U.S. invasion of Iraq.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, some of the Americans involved should have been charged with war crimes. That's why you got to be very careful who you call a war criminal, because in war, a lot of things happen here people are ashamed of. That's absolutely correct. A lot of people were not held accountable. George Bush was not held accountable. I signed a petition the day we went to war saying that this was a mistake in a long history of mistakes, because we all knew it was wrong. The United States has no business trying to nation build in a part of the world where it's culturally blind and doesn't know anything about the religion, the people, or the languages. I mean, we just got involved in something that was the neocons decided to bring democracy and capitalism to the Middle East because they thought they were successful with the former Soviet Union. So they thought they would carry the campaign. They were an utter failure, and unfortunately, a lot of them are still in place telling us, well, we made a few mistakes. You're damn right they made a few mistakes, and they've never been held accountable for them.
All right, Professor Joe Siracusa, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the NewsHour.